Segregation is here, at least in the UK. This has been a long time coming. It's been difficult, I know. There was a bill in Parliament, should we segregate the country? And it passed. No, it didn't. This was entirely the result of free choice.
Yes, this is just what people do when they're given the freedom to choose who they associate with. Generally speaking, they associate with those more similar to them than those less similar to them, especially when those lack of similarities causes a lot of friction.
Yeah. Or say you happen to be part of a group of people who like to do some similar things. I don't know, like a religious group. So you all get
like
the house.
to band together and get into some wacky misadventures.
Yeah, apparently this basic knowledge of anyone who's ever been to university was lost on the university class that runs our country, which still amazes me.
I don't think well, maybe they forgot to keep track of it, but I don't think that they are unaware of this. I think that the people who rule this country and most countries just hate us and hate our ability to do things that we want to do and want to continuously strip us of those abilities.
Well, I think you might be right,
Yes.
at least in the revealed preferences. So we'll start off by promoting something on lotusis.com, being why feminist immigration policy will save the West. Because everything we're about to lay out, it probably would fix all of those problems. So there's that. I'm sorry, but like every time I do a segment about immigration, I bring this up because
this is your one go-to.
Well, it would actually fix the world. So I'm just saying.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm not too. I'm quite partial to the Berlusconi immigration policy, but
it's a bit further than mine.
Is that a bit further?
Is she hot?
I don't know.
Whatever he said, I forget.
I know. I mean, obviously, you'd have to have immigration officers giving it the old eyeball test, but I would trust that more than whatever immigration policies we've got right now.
No more female immigration officers either, because they don't know what women are.
We know what they would bring in. They would bring in the Lizzos.
They'd be like,
see,
so hot.
See, we're not that bad, are we?
But anyway, Lizzo news next week, because there are news there, apparently. But we'll start off with...
I think that might be tomorrow, me and Connor. Okay. There is some actual Lizzo news coming in the pipeline. That was a terrible choice of words.
Carry on. Moving on. So we'll go to some data real quick, just to make my point about, it seems to be the case that the people here don't like living here and have left, by looking at the people who used to live here and have left. So this is the English diaspora. I've been over this a few times. I'm a little bit annoyed how every other ethnic group gets its own diaspora, but in the UK, we don't talk about it like it isn't real. But there you are. Here's the data. If you go through the various censuses of those countries, you'll find those numbers of where English people live, which is not in England. Majoritively, they live outside of it.
That's actually really shocking to see that it's an actual majority of people who are English are outside of the UK.
Yeah, the largest group being those living in the United States, of course.
So those will probably be, first generation who've just gone over there?
It's based on census data. So when the US Census was done, people who basically said they were English in the census rather than American. So there you have that. Anyway, moving forward, because my point is not one that has jumped out of the ether, has shocked an amazing number of people, but I don't know if you've ever walked anywhere, you probably have seen it. But in 2005, you could see here on The Guardian, there was an article about this. Britain sleepwalking into segregation. This was from, I believe, what was it? Trevor Phillips, not the one from GTA.
Oh,
instead.
Damn. Are we sure he didn't have a budding journalism career for The Guardian before the events of that story?
Yeah, and then he went to, North Yankton and did the job.
Yeah.
And ended up doing what he did.
He went from here to the Canadian Air Force, then he failed the test for the Canadian Air Force, then North Yankton. It's a colourful life that man has lived.
So before that, Trevor was apparently working in the quality departments for Tony Blair.
Oh, and before this, he was working as a hitman for hire in Better Call Saul as well.
Was he?
Yeah, he shows up in an episode of Better Call Saul.
I still haven't watched it.
I know. I mean, it's all fan fiction to you.
Yeah, good fan fiction, though. Anyway, but he says in here, Mr. Phillips, among the measures, Mr. Phillips will suggest that for white schools, they should be forced to take large numbers of ethnic minority pupils to aid integration. So large numbers of foreigners came to the UK after Tony Blair, of course, and the solution to that, a thing that no one asked for, was to force them into the local schools because ideology.
This is a very poor idea. Don't let me get too off topic here, but I do think this is important to note. So after Brown v. Board of Education in the US, it took a while for the schools to actually begin to integrate a lot of the students. And
I think we should make it clear, just in case there's someone who isn't familiar. We've never had segregation laws.
No, we've not.
What we're talking about is people self-segregating.
This is,
just to be clear.
This is an attempt from people to force integration where people had not been legally denied it, but instead
they literally chose to be segregated.
They just didn't. So it took a while, and it was only in the mid to late 60s when it really started happening due to government fiat. They just started forcing people into areas through busing and such. And it caused a lot of problems. And there is a book that is very difficult to get a hold of right now because of how controversial the subject matter is, called Race War in High School. And it details a particular school I think it was in New York. This was written from the perspective of one of the teachers who worked there while all of this was going on, where they had a massive influx of black students forced into the school that tipped over the proportions of white to black students. And he said that roughly as soon as it got to about 40% black to 60% white, when you could see that the scales were about to tip over, all of the black students basically just started terrorizing the place, and it erupted into a race war within the high school where some of the black students and other ethnic minority students started doing heinous things like raping the teachers. This is a factual account that you're not really able to get hold of anymore because of how controversial it is.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's a pretty harrowing read.
Well, thankfully, well, not thankfully, actually.
And so
we are talking about things have gotten that bad in some of the enclaves, but
yeah, and so UK administrators have presumably read a part of that and gone, well, I mean, we can manage to somehow avoid the bad parts of this, right? And if the bad parts,
we don't have an American population. So
yeah, we don't have the American population, but generally speaking, when minority groups hit a certain proportion in comparison to Western groups,
the culture changes.
Yeah, culture changes and bad things start happening to the native populations, sadly. That's just a observable fact.
So that case withstanding, because we're talking about 2005 here, back when Trevor Phillips was warning about this, he says, the fact is that we as a society are almost, without noticing it, becoming more divided by race and religion. Now, anyone could have seen this coming, I would have thought, even back then, and apparently they did.
Are you telling me that if you suddenly increase vastly the population of people from different religions and race into a country, that people might start to divide themselves more than they had when they were more homogenous?
Yes.
Anyway,
the response at the time, of course, for people who don't know, we can go to the next one just to get a flavor of it, was complete denial that this was happening in the UK. You can see here, this was some academics' book they wrote about it, as they put it, challenging myths about race and migration. And they argue in here that we're not sleepwalking into segregation. And in fact, it is a racist assertion to say that we were. As a side note, Trevor Phillips isn't actually the chap from Grand Theft Auto. He's actually a black man. And they called him racist for pointing out that this was happening.
I wouldn't put it past Trevor.
Put the black cop.
Yeah.
Anyway, the chap in question, he ended up making a film about this. I featured it before. Here's just the IMDb listing because I can't find the film anymore. It used to be easily available, and now it's not.
Like many other things.
Don't know why that was. Anyway, one of the main points in this film was data, which is something that left never really uses. But what was funny is, as you can see, I don't know if you can see actually the year this was produced, 2015. A lot had gone on. People started to realize, maybe we should do something, because it turns out not everyone's the same in the world. There's differences.
Who'd have thought that one?
Yeah.
Francis Fukuyama shook.
Well, The Guardian made a review of this back in the day, and I was expecting it when I found it to just be the typical, death to Trevor Phillips for pointing out that
I can't believe how racist he is.
Yeah, this lady here actually just was like, yeah, he's right. Which is weird.
That's a shock.
This lady says it's odd and welcome sense of being talked to as an adult. Okay. He thinks that preventing people from expressing prejudiced ideas might not have been the best way to stop them thinking them. It is amazing to look back at what the Tony Blair era actually thought, because it is just insane. Because after years of hard labor and new labor, racism still exists. Amazing. Censorship does not change minds.
Good God.
In Phillips' view, the well-intentioned work of the HRC to stamp out racial bigotry has succeeded mainly in creating a climate of fear in which it is now impossible to publicly identify social problems or investigate criminal actions with an ethnic dimension, which is obviously a correct assessment.
Well, I mean, it's not that people weren't pointing these things out back in the mid-2000s. It's just if you were, you would likely get taken to court for some form of defamation lawsuit.
I mean, Trevor only got away with it in 2005 because of his position of power and the fact that he's also got racial privilege there as a black man, of course. He pictured here with Nigel Farage. But obviously this is the big no-no in British culture. They're saying here social workers didn't help Victoria Kimberley, for instance, because they didn't want to be seen as high-handedly intervening in an African family's culture. The predominantly Asian gangs who groomed girls in Rotherham were allowed to do so for years because the police didn't want to get involved in something politically sensitive, and so on. I mean, she even gives us
this is the actual Guardian journalist listing these as well.
which is really weird, right?
That's shocking to see.
Like, it's amazing to look back and be like, huh, there was a time in which the Guardian would actually just write what they would now refer to as, our talking points of the truth. Here's what happened. It's bad. Don't do that. But no, never again will they write this. Anyway, this was 8 years ago. So, of course, after seeing the serious error of their ways, there was a course correction. No, there wasn't.
No.
So now we are 8 years later from even that movie being published, and 22 years later? Something like that? No.
But wait, from which film being published?
17 years later from Trevor Phillips talking about it in 2005.
18 years from Trevor Phillips talking about it,
I can
8
count.
years from the film.
There we are. So we can see here, this chap decided to put this graph up, and this is what inspired this. As you can see, segregation in Dewsbury is staggering. The River Keldar runs through the town. On the West Bank, the population is 1.3% white British, while on the East Bank, it's 92.4%. Some wards are a bit more mixed, but the river is the great dividing line. UK's version of 8 Mile in Detroit.
Yes, I was going to also bring up Maven Politic, but I see that you've actually got his link coming up right next as well.
Well, this chap does an interesting point. See, references. Well, maybe this isn't all hunky dory. Maybe people don't just live kumbaya in completely divided neighborhoods. His evidence for this is the series of riots that have happened throughout the years, particularly race riots, which are rather funny actually when you start looking at the dividing lines, not the riots themselves. But he says in here, here's the highlights of race relations in Dewsbury. 1989, there was a riot between English and Pakistanis. And then in 2007, Iraqi Kurds versus Pakistanis.
All right.
2008, the English and the Pakistanis teamed up to fight the Kurds. And then
we're beginning to see a hierarchy establish itself.
And then later in the year, presumably the Kurds and the English were banished, and the Hungarians and Pakistanis were fighting each other, which kind of just makes me think of that Scotland meme, where it's just like, the Pakistanis are sat there being like, us, Pakistanis and Indians are mortal enemies. Us, and also the English, and also the Hungarians, and also the Iraqi Kurds. So there we are. There's also the religious maps, as I believe you were pointing out, with Maven, who in the next link pointed out the religious divide, which is pretty stark. These neighbouring wards in Leicester, one is, 75% Hindu, the other's 75% Muslim. Amazing.
So it turns out that among the people who a lot of native English probably wouldn't even be able to tell apart from one another if you were to just test it out looking at them, also segregate themselves along all sorts of different lines as well, because, as you always like to point out, not everybody in the world is the exact same.
I mean, it's kind of amazing that the Tony Blair era politicians actually fought that, because how would everyone be the same if you could tell them apart? I mean, just like the most basic baby knowledge doesn't even seem to...
It is actually... It's the way that I always see people talk about how race is a social construct. If we just get rid of the idea of race, then it'll go away. No, it won't, because at the end of the day, I could stand you next to Rishi Sunak, and there would be...
No difference.
There would be a visible difference between the two of you. That doesn't have to, determine the quality or value of that human being that I'm looking at, but there is a difference.
Can visually see it. But you can take this anywhere as well. If you go to the next link here, there's some ONS data, which I've just picked up from random areas. This one here, 94.6% Muslim. What wonderful.
Where's that in?
There you are. I forget. I don't know if you can zoom out, John. I did zoom out when I put the links, but apparently that didn't translate in the link, so that's my fault. But there we are.
And then
that's Savile Town.
Oh, yeah.
Up north.
What a hell of a name. And right next to it, there are districts that are completely 0% Muslim as well.
Yeah, if you go to the east, it's like 0.0% in some of those places, as you can see. 0.7% there.
0% there.
Yeah, amazing. Right next to each other. 100% difference, effectively.
Yep. Wait, zoom out, because it looks like the vast majority of this, at least this district in this town. Zoom out a little bit more for me, John. Please, John. Please. Thank you. Yeah, there's just a big chunk of that area that is almost entirely Muslim, and then the rest of it around it, they're like circled. If this was like a military... If this was a military force, then these people would be surrounded, but instead they're kind of just planted in there.
Well, I've chosen Muslim as well because they're the most segregated due to demands for communal prayer in mosque, prohibition of alcohol, clothing demands are different,
Makes sense,
etc. And so there's that. You can do it with others. If we go to Blackburn, we can also see the next link here.
Let's not go to Blackburn.
Well, we have. Here you are.
Have you ever been to Blackburn?
No, I haven't.
It's an asshole.
Wasn't planning on.
Yeah, don't go.
Well, here's some other side news, as you can see again there. Areas that are 90% Muslim, which are not insignificant as well.
God.
You can also see it with Jewish communities as well, because of course they have the same demands as Muslims in terms of different demands for
they've
clothing,
got
etc.
Strong community.
This one in, I believe this is somewhere in London, 70% Jewish in that area. But of course, the Jewish community makes such a minor impact because their numbers are tiny compared to the Muslim community.
And I know in the US it's a 2% population. In the UK, isn't it like 1.3% or something?
It's nothing burger.
Yeah, it's barely any.
And as Maven pointed out, also Hindus are the same. If you go to the next one here, we can just see more of that in a different area of Britain, as British as you or I. This area, as Maven mentioned, this is basically the same area.
Brings a tear to my eye.
Yeah. One thing I did find strange is that it's pretty much impossible to get the same kind of concentration with Christians. So if you change it to Christians, like, you can't get those high numbers of 90% anywhere in the country.
Well, I imagine a lot of people will have marked down on the census that they don't have any religion in the first place, but they will probably still share some kind of ethnic background with the people they're surrounding themselves
Cultural
by.
Christianity rather than religious.
Yeah.
I thought that, but then I went and checked out the no religion tab, and if we can go to the next one, I believe that is that one. And, well, you can actually see the dividing line between the mostly Muslim areas and the non, or Hindu, etc., with the no religion line. That's pretty much how you find the normies at this point. Anyway, moving on. I thought we'd just check out some other parts that may illustrate a level of segregation in British society. That capital city we have is a pretty big one. And I don't know if you noticed this.
There is no capital city of England at this point.
There's one of the UK. That's what it is. But as you can see here, we have our Pakistani mayor of London arguing with the Indian Hindu Prime Minister. And
having a slap fight with each other.
They're arguing about housing foreigners in London. So, I mean, like, most people, I think, involved in London politics cared, but most other people in the country just kind of looked at stuff like this and just went, doesn't affect me in the slightest. I mean, what relation do I even have to any of this?
Is anybody surprised that the foreign mayor of London wants to invite in an even bigger voting bloc for himself?
No, he's a politician.
Exactly.
There we are. And if you go to the next link here, I think we see a lot of people, I did see in response were posting the bloody bastard clip. For people who haven't seen that.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
People who haven't seen that, it's absolute god. We don't have time to play it. But it's a couple of Indian chaps arguing about how to keep each other safe. They're actually
That's what they're arguing about.
Yeah, they're actually arguing about how to keep each other safe on the road, but they're angry and shouting, so they keep angrily shouting in English swear words, but they don't know how to use them.
F you bloody bastard!
It's like, all right, there we are. Go check it out on your own time. It's good.
But they can both speak the same language as well. They do at various points, but then they just keep going back to English.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
So the proficiency isn't there, I guess, in either. But we'll go back to the US, because don't forget the US, of course, they have their own problems. We can see here, there is a self-segregation going on in Florida. There are certain people leaving. There's a couple of people here on CNN.
Oh, they're leftists.
Yeah, they're saying they have to leave the state, and they share their reason for leaving the state, which is this clip here of Ron DeSantis saying he will no longer support transitioning children. Now, I can't talk about any of that subject because of YouTube. I'm just going to leave this there because I think that's all I really needed to say, wasn't it? There you are.
There's a good job you reminded me because I was about to say something not YouTube friendly.
Keep it in your pants.
What?
Instead of on the surgery table. Anyway.
Okay.
All right, moving to the next one, because the US cities are also something else. I mean, there's this link here, which is an article about that. The fact that, US cities are being completely depopulated, I believe. I don't know if that's the right one. That should have been a Discord image instead, actually, but whatever. I don't know. This was meant to be a link about CNN being the third largest news channel, but it's not scrolled properly. There we are. There's the image I was talking about instead, which is domestic migration in the United States, because their big migration of the recent eras is not international. That's a big problem, don't get me wrong, with the United States. But the internal migration is mad, and we can see it here, where you have all of the cities just emptying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at the city dots. I mean, Florida is a story in and of itself, don't get me wrong, but look at those city dots.
Yeah, Florida's actually filling up not just the cities, it's filling up whole counties. Whereas in Texas, for instance, you can see places are just filling around the major population centers that are the cities. In California, you can see that people are leaving the cities, and you can guarantee what this is. This will be white liberals leaving the big democratic cities in places like California to move to the big democratic cities in Texas and make them even more democratic. So eventually they end up being just like the cities they left.
Well, no, that's the thing.
Oh, really?
That you can see, for example, Los Angeles, New York, or the red areas are the ones that are emptying. And you can see the big cities in Texas, they're also emptying. They're not going there. No one's going there. Everyone from those cities and every city in the United States seems to be leaving if they can, especially the largest, bluest ones, of course, and going out into the red countryside or small towns.
So they want to ruin the rural environment then, like the episode of South Park.
Yeah, I mean,
if I have to live in LA, then everybody does.
Yeah. So again, I mean, massively sympathetic to the whole you don't get the vote after you've moved here. I mean, especially Floridians, there just happen to be the worst ones in terms of why are there so many New Yorkers around here?
I think in America, if you lived in San Francisco and consistently voted Democrat policies for your entire life, you just have the vote stripped of you wherever you go.
But anyway, that's not the only thing in the United States. I mean, a lot of people have been trying to point out that segregation in the UK is actually not as bad as the United States. It is still worse there.
Oh, really?
In their view. A guy posted this image, if we go to the next one, in which there's some data, someone trying to prove that, haha, look, we're superior. This is a British outlet because we are less segregated. No. This data's 10 years old. So none of what I just showed you, I think, is incorporated. And forgive me for thinking that maybe our media are actually so out of date they don't even know what's happening next door to them by the looks of it. Because if you go to the BBC, they had some news after reading that data that I showed you. Ethnic segregation in England and Wales is at an all-time low. Really?
I mean, that's...
Really? I mean, I'm sorry, but like, when this used to be a vast majority country of natives, I think the segregation might have been lower.
Probably. Also, that census map didn't seem to paint this picture.
No.
I wonder what data they're going off of this study.
Well, this is from January, so they should have the data, but instead they've just gone, nope, trust us. So yeah, I don't trust them.
Computer says no.
But there we are. Segregation in the UK, now the norm. And if you're Americans, good luck with the blues, because they ain't welcome around these parts. If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the premium book clubs, this one on Julius Evola's Fascism Viewed from the Right. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.